So tonight the workshop is about just intuitive acrylic painting. We are going to be using some fluid acrylics as well as tube acrylics. And so I'll be showing you those in a moment, but let me show you some of the artworks that I prepared for the workshop. So this is one of the ones that I did. It's done on a like a cardboard panel, and so that's one example where you're just enjoying the process, enjoying the colors, using shapes that are familiar to you that you enjoy. So, for instance, this swirl that's inside here, I love doing swirls. I love doing this type of leaf here as well. So, it's it's kind of getting into your comfort zone, but with acrylics. This is another one that I did for in preparation for the workshop. Now, this one, interestingly, was done on an old panel. So this is a canvas panel. And this canvas panel was already painted on, but I didn't like the painting that was on it. It was a painting that was not finished. It was just a painting that was in process. So I took the painting in process, I completely covered it with new paint. You can see the color that it was kind of a reddy orange out here, right? And then I just completely covered it up, and that's one of the beauties of acrylic paint. Something I really love about acrylics is there's no crying in acrylics, because if you don't like something on your artwork, you just cover it right up. It's awesome. Love acrylic painting. And so that's what this one is working right over top. Actually, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's all kinds of texture underneath here because I was building texture on the underlayer. And you know what? That just adds to the story of the artwork, right? And somebody asked over on YouTube, that's pretty funny. Do I have to pay people in order to buy my artwork? No, I don't. They fall in love with it and they buy it themselves. Ah, oh, somebody thinks my artwork's trash, but you know what? That is a-okay, because my artwork is mine and your artwork is yours. And some people like to paint in a very refined way, and other people like to paint in a very loose and expressive way. So my paintings are very loose and expressive. And I understand that that is not for everybody. And it is okay. I want you to understand, if you're an artist and you're watching this, it is okay. You are enough. Your artwork is specifically your style, and it's all good. All right. So I have pieces that are much more refined than these, that are quite large. My largest one is 8 feet by 5 feet, and they are very sophisticated. But you know what? That's There is a whole range of art that we can make, and it's all valid and it's all good. That's my attitude anyway. So thank you for those comments so that I could bring that up. Oh, I appreciate it. All right. And let's take a look at tonight some of the paints that we're going to be working with. So you can go from craft paints, and I'm going to show you some, meaning this is an Artist Loft white, titanium white in a tube. Then you can also work with this type. This is a folk art, but this is a fluid acrylic. And these are, there's a deco art, Americana. So these will work perfectly fine for what we're going to do tonight as well. And then you get into studio paints, or a little bit more expensive paints. And for instance, this is a shimmer paint by Pebeo, and they call it their studio acrylics. So this is going to be more expensive than the craft paints that I just showed you. It is a studio paint for your finished artworks. Here's another one that it says studio paint. It's Lucas, and this is Krill Studio. So that's an acrylic studio paint. And then we start to get into the finer paints. So this is Pebeo's Origin acrylics. And so this would be, again, studio, but fine art studio for your finished artworks or your artworks. You can sell your artworks. You can sell drawings with an ink pen. Okay, it's all right. It's all good. It's the flair that you put into it as an artist is what's important, and the heart that you pour out into it. But this is one of my favorite paints. Yes, Pebeo did give it to me. I do work with the Pebeo Paint Company, and I have a whole collection of these. But feel free to ask me any questions about these paints as we go along. I will be happy to share with you about them. And then a top of the line expensive paint is this golden. These are what they call their high flow paints. Oh, okay. Well, it appears that I did not close that one the last time I was using it, which was yesterday. So hold on a second. Let me clean this up. Okay, I already have paint on me, which is typical, right? Typical. Okay, so a good start to the evening. I already have paint all over me and other things. I only wore very minimal jewelry on my hands tonight because I know how it is with acrylic paints, and I have rings that have acrylic paint like down in all the little crevices. So just crazy. I love it though. All right. Yay. That's cleaned up. Now, so let me show you another one of those. Let's make sure this one's closed. Yes, this one is closed. And so here's the golden high flow phthalo green. This is a fluid acrylic, and this is a fluid acrylic. But this is they call it high flow because it's very watery. It's very ink-like, and so this is Golden's, what I would call Golden's acrylic ink, although it's so much more than that. There's so much you can do with it. Last week we did the inky blooming inks was the workshop last week. And in that workshop, we were using acrylic inks. So they are also something that you can use for what we're doing tonight. If you have any, for instance, this is a Liquitex ink. It's an acrylic ink. I would call this a professional grade. I think it says professional on it, right? It says professional acrylic right there. And so you absolutely can use your inks as well. Hey there, flower gazer. If you have inks from last week, this is another one here. This is from, I believe, Michael's, the Artist Loft. And this is another acrylic ink. So what I'm showing you are all acrylic paints. Another paint that I like to have on hand, especially for this type um, of painting. And the reason is that you're going to find areas of your painting where you want to, as part of this process, hey there, what difference between acrylic and oils? Hey there, is it Rehawk? Um, okay, good question. So Rehawk is asking, what's the difference between acrylic and oils? Well, acrylic paints have what's called an acrylic polymer binder. Some people call it an acrylic resin binder. And what that does is it's very flexible, even when it's dry. That's why you can paint it on a big canvas. And I actually have that huge canvas I have in my storage is rolled up. I have many rolled canvases that have acrylic paint on them. And the reason is because that acrylic binder dries and it's still flexible, which is awesome. And then oil paint, it has an oil binder. So normally it would be linseed oil, safflower oil, poppy oil, or walnut oil. Those are the common ones that you see as a base for the pigment. We're using the exact same pigments, okay? So you can buy an oil paint that's phthalo blue, and the pigment in here and the pigment in the oil paint are exactly the same. The difference is, what is the binder? What is it suspended in? Or what somebody asked me this week, what is what is the vehicle? And the vehicle in this case is an acrylic polymer, and the vehicle in the case of an oil paint is oil. And sometimes companies will also add fillers or different mediums within their paints in order to give it different properties. But the base of an oil paint is a natural seed oil, a drying natural seed oil. Not all oils. If you have mineral oil, for instance, mineral oil does not fully dry. And that is why oil pastels, which are those sticks of oil paint, an oil pastel has mineral oil in it. What is mineral oil? Mineral oil is a petroleum product, and mineral oil does not fully dry. So that's why some people say, oh, you know, and my oil pastel painting is not dry. You can still smudge it. Yes, that's because it has mineral oil in it to make it so creamy the way it is, but they do not dry. Whereas oil paint has natural seed oils in the base of it, and those will fully dry. Now, what you have to be careful of, and what I prefer to paint oil paintings on a board. If I'm doing finished works, I like to have the oil paint on a board, and the reason is because the board is not flexible, right? The board is going to stay stable. Whereas you can paint oil paint also on a canvas, but just bear in mind that over time, that oil paint is going to get harder and harder and harder and harder over time. The little, the, what do they call it? I forget what they call it. They're the molecules within the oil start out as little tiny pieces, loose pieces. And then over time, they link up and create longer chains that become more brittle over time. So initially, your oil painting is nice and juicy, but over time, it's going to become hard. And that's great. It creates a nice protective film. However, if you put it on a flexible surface, there's the possibility that your oil painting could crack over time. And you see that in some old paintings. You see all kinds of cracks all over it. That's from that those chains being created and becoming harder and less flexible. So I know that was probably TMI, too much information, but since you asked the question, I wanted to be sure that I answered it for you. And I appreciate all of your questions. So feel free to throw your questions into the that have to do with art into the comments. Okay. If you throw questions into the comments that are not pertaining to art, you might get banned. Just know that. Oh, you are quite welcome. Uh, Ray, what is it? Rowlett, Ray Hawk said, thank you for explaining. It's my pleasure. And if you have any other questions along the way, feel free to ask because I love to share my knowledge. I had one of my students tell me one time, you're like an art encyclopedia. And I'm like, well, I have been doing it for close to 30 years and I've tried a lot, a lot of different kinds of paints. And I love just everything that has to do with art and color, and it's all so beautiful. Nothing like immersing yourself in the beauty of color, I can tell you that. And that's why I say art is for the artist. We just it's a bonus if somebody likes our work, but the art is really for us. It's us bringing the divine in and putting it down through vibrant colors on paper, wood, whatever surface we're using. So feel good about it. Feel good about whatever you make because it's all just part of the journey. That's my attitude anyway. That is my attitude. All right. So we talked about the various colors of, oh, there was one other type of acrylic paint that I wanted to mention to you that I like to have when we're doing these type of paintings. And that's because sometimes there are areas within your painting that we're going to be working on that you want to quiet the area. So if you want to quiet the area, you need to put some opaque paint over top of that area. And what a lot of artists and I also like to do is I like to use something called gesso to create those quiet areas within my painting. And so gesso is an acrylic primer. It's a white paint, but it has a very matte finish to it. And because it's called a primer, it's usually used before you paint. It's used to put on a surface to make the surface nice and grippy to receive your paint. You can even put this gesso underneath an oil painting. So I just wanted to throw that in there since we were just talking about oil painting. So you'll see that you're going to use gesso, and gesso doesn't just come in white. Gesso also comes in multiple colors. Holbein is very famous, the company Holbein, for having lots of various colors of gesso. But what it means is that when the paint, this primer layer is dry, it has a lot of grip to it and it's ready to receive your other painting mediums, okay? But it's also works great because it's very opaque. It works great to quiet certain areas of your painting. And it's just an acrylic paint, even though it has those other properties. And so you can add a drop of color into your white gesso and create other colors to use within your painting as well. It'll just come out super matte. So bear that in mind that this will have a matte finish to it. Oftentimes you'll find that acrylic has sort of a shiny finish to it. Let me see, like this one. There's no varnish on this or anything, but do you see the shimmer here? The shine. So sometimes your acrylic paints dry shiny and sometimes they dry matte. And sometimes they dry with in between, which we call satin finish. And then you can use, when you're all done with the painting, if you want the whole painting to have one sheen, then there's something called a varnish. And yes, acrylic paints have varnishes. You can either use a spray acrylic varnish or you can use a brush on acrylic varnish. And what that does is it will help to make the sheen of your painting all the same. So if you want the whole thing to be shiny or you want the whole thing to be matte, you can do that with a varnish. Now let me show you an example of where you might want to do that. Right here, this black line is very shiny. And that was this right here, the carbon black from Golden. But a lot of the other paint is very matte. So if I wanted the whole painting to be matte, I could use a matte varnish, and that would make the whole painting have the same sheen to it. So that's something else to consider after you've made your artworks. And it's just another, it'll just say acrylic varnish, and it has the gloss, matte, and satin finishes usually to it. Okay, something else that we're going to use tonight, of course, is our surfaces. We have many different surfaces. I just showed you, this is a panel, a canvas panel. This is a canvas board. It's like a pressed cardboard. Let me show you that actually. Ooh, where do I have it? Right here. So this is I got these at Jerry's Artorama. So if you're lucky enough to live near Jerry's, awesome. They have great options for surfaces. Fantastic. And so this is by Fredericks, the company Fredericks, and they're very economical. What do they call it? Cut edge canvas panel. So it's just cardboard instead of being something stiffer than that, but very economical. And if you're just playing and testing, this is a great option. And this is one here, one of the panels. Now, what I did when I got the panel, and whenever I get canvases, so you can buy canvas boards like this canvas board right here. You can buy these cardboard panels. You can buy wood panels that already have a layer of gesso or primer on them. But most professional artists, what they'll do is when they get their surface, they will put a fresh coat of gesso on it. And why do we do that? Here's, so I put a fresh coat of this gesso on the front of this panel before we paint with it tonight. Why? Because what I find is that if you have a pre-made, like let's say you're Michaels and you get a pre-made canvas, Um, that canvas, they sprayed on the gesso, and it's okay, but it doesn't have the same matte properties that I like going into a painting. Oftentimes those pre-primed panels are a little bit what do you call it, they like repel water. If you were to try to put water on it, it beads up on top of it, but I don't want that. I want the surface to be thirsty and ready to receive my paint. So I re-gessoed the front of this. So I took it out of the pack and I put a coat of gesso on top of it with a brush. And then, because it's a panel, a cardboard panel, I also put a coat of gesso on the back of it in order to seal the back of it, so that if I'm running around my studio and working with it, if I got a blob of paint on the back, it's already sealed and I can just wipe it off. If I did not seal the back of that, it is like this, and it's very absorbent, and it would pull whatever water or paint, if I put it down in the wrong place, into it, and it could swell up. And then if I had artwork on the front, I would not be very happy with that. So it's just safer when you're preparing to paint with acrylics. It's safer if you go ahead and you put gesso. If you're using a panel like that, you can just put gesso on the back as well. So this panel is ready to go, and this is what we're going to use tonight. Now, can you Oh, canvas, because we're talking about canvas, right? This is a primed canvas and it's fabric canvas. So this is something that I love to use when I'm experimenting, learning a subject or learning a medium, and I want to work with canvas. Oh, thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. And this is, in this case, it's the Blick brand, but what you're looking for is a canvas pad, okay? Not a pad that is canvas paper. You don't want that. Canvas paper is paper that has been impressed with the look of canvas. It's not actual canvas. So what is canvas? Canvas is duck cotton that has a primer put on it. Okay. So what's nice is this is a canvas pad, not a canvas paper pad. And so it has actual sheets of canvas. So this is way cheaper than buying stretched canvases, because it's just a cut sheet of canvas. So there you go. It's got the primer on the front and it is ready to go. Now, I usually do not reprime these because I use these sheets when I'm experimenting, so I don't care. I don't care. But if I'm doing a finished piece of artwork, or a piece of artwork that I know that I'm going to possibly have available to sell, then I will gesso it, put a fresh coat of gesso on it. But this one, I was this is the beginning of one of the projects we're going to do tonight. We're actually going to work on this canvas pad so you can see how it works. Um, can you do this process on paper? Can you put acrylic paints on paper? Absolutely, you can. And hey, a perfect gift. Welcome in over on Whatnot. Yes, you can use paper. And so here is my favorite studio paper for watercolors and mixed media and acrylics. My favorite paper. And that is the Canson XL watercolor paper. I like it because it's 140 pounds. And so that is a nice heavy paper. And because it's a watercolor paper, it is designed for water media, not for oil media. So I would not put oil pastel or oil paints on the paper surface unless I first coated the paper surface with a coat or two of my primer, my gesso. Then you can use oil paint on it. But the reason that you don't use oil paint on regular paper is that it soaks in, the oil will soak into the paper. You won't see it initially, but you'll see it later. It soaks into the paper and it will actually break down the paper fibers. So you want any oil type media, so oil pastels, oil paints, and oil sticks. You want those to sit on top of paper if you choose to use paper as your substrate, which you absolutely can. But the trick is you just have to gesso the paper first. I would put 2 coats of gesso on, one going in one direction and the other going in the other direction for the 2 coats, okay? But this is if you're doing water media, so that's watercolor, acrylics, or anything like water soluble pencils, you can use those on the watercolor paper. And so this is the Canson XL, and this is the beginning of a painting that we're going to work on tonight. So you can see all of the acrylic, and this is just creating a background that we'll then work on top of. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to make the backgrounds, and then we're going to do a painting on top of one of these backgrounds. Okay. And then something, of course, you want to have brushes. Do not use your good watercolor brushes with acrylics. That's no, that's a no, no. Don't do that. And the reason is because acrylic paint gets way down in here in the bottom of the bristles. Let me get a bigger brush so you can see that a little bit more easily. Ew, here's a nice big one. It gets way down here in the bottom of the bristles, the acrylic. And so you really, the acrylic beats up your brushes. Where, like, here's one where you can still see the residue of the paint down here, right? Whereas watercolor brushes, it doesn't happen. The watercolor um, paint generally just comes right out. Hey there, Manos over on YouTube. Welcome in, welcome in. Thanks so much for shouting out and saying hi. I saw your comment from last week. I appreciate it on the video. Thanks so much. Um, so you want to have, in this case, this is a synthetic fiber. It's called Taclon. This is the white Taclon nylon. This is a brown Taclon or golden Taclon, they like to call it. Okay, I'm looking just to see if there's something else. Mostly I just have the white Taclon and the golden Taclon. They're my favorites. But some brushes do come with a black fibers. So this one is by Princeton, the Princeton Paint Company, and it's their Catalyst brushes, which are super cool. And there's a whole range of Catalyst tools, which I probably have one sitting right here. Yeah, so this is a Catalyst tool. It's silicone, and you can use it to move around your paints, your acrylic paints. But Catalyst makes a range here that has a black fibers, which is fine too. I love these Catalyst brushes because they're snappy. If I show you when I do this, they just snap right back. And I like that when I'm painting with acrylics, because acrylics can be a little thicker if you're using using it out of your tubes. So I like those Catalyst brushes for that. Something else we're going to use tonight is some wax paper. Well, you can use wax paper, or I'm looking for the other thing here, or you can use something called palette paper. And I'm looking for my palette paper. Where are you? Okay, palette paper. I thought it was right next to me. Hold on just a second, because I usually do have some right next to me. Okay, here we go. This is palette paper. And let me show you here. So what this is, it's a coated paper that you're going to squeeze your acrylics out on here, and then you can do all your color mixing and everything right on this. Some people use a solid palette, so I also have a wood palette, and I have a clear acrylic palette. And those are, a palette is just where you're going to squeeze your paint out and then pick it up with your brush or do your color mixing. But I love the convenience of this throwaway palette pad, because you work with it and then you can just throw it away when you're done. Now, if you're going to, and I use the wax paper, if I don't have to have any palette paper on hand, feel free to use wax paper. Some people even use, I've heard some artists say they just use tinfoil. So whatever you have on hand is awesome for that. Now, there's another type of palette that I like to use, and it is the Richardson Stay Wet palette. So I'm going to show you what that looks like, but I'm only going to flip it up for a second because there's paint in here. So it's the Masterson Stay Wet palette, and inside here there's paint. acrylic paint, which normally acrylic paint evaporates, the water in it evaporates because it's water based, and then your paint in very short order is no good anymore because once the water's gone, the paint is permanent. But this has a sheet and it has a sponge and a sheet on top. So the sponge helps to keep the environment wet and you keep the lid on. Like I can feel, I don't know if you can see it, but there's moisture all in here. And so that moisture is what helps to keep the paint wet. And if you're somebody that paints all day long, um, this is the smaller Masterson. There's also a much larger Masterson. And so that will keep your paint wet. But once that paper is trashed, meaning there's been too much paint on it, you can get more of these paint liners, the liner for it. So if I was done with that paint, I would just crunch that up and throw it away and put a new one in there. And what you have to do is you have to soak this sheet in water. So I already soaked this one in water and now it's ready to put in there and receive acrylic paints and keep it nice and moist for me during a whole painting session. So that's when you have painting sessions that are all day long and if you had it out on the other kind of palette paper that I showed you like this, it would not stay wet. It would continuously evaporate and then you'd be like, your paint would be getting too dry. Okay. And I think that's it for the actual stuff that we're going to be working with. Now, I do want to also tell you that not every one of your paintings is going to be successful. Okay. When you're learning a new subject and you are exploring, I call myself an experimental painter. So most of my paintings are experiments. And so your experiments don't always come out the way you envisioned or the way you want them to. So when we paint, there are going to be tons of duds. Okay. It's okay. It is okay. If it's on paper, I will throw it in the trash or I will cut it up and use the small pieces in other artworks. This happens to be on a panel. This is a Blick panel. And so this is one that I was working on yesterday and the day before. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like not coming together. It's not doing what I want it to do. So it's very easy to, in acrylics, it's very easy just to cover over most, if not all of this, and then create something else. So if you do have panels like this, or you have wood panels that you've done artwork on, or you've started, do not be afraid to just cover the whole thing up and start over again. And that's the beautiful thing about acrylics. We can just cover it up using our gesso and then just do it again, which is what I did with this little one, right? I didn't like where it was going, so I just took the old painting under there, covered it up, and started a new painting. So it's okay if not everything comes out the way you want it to. Um, with acrylics, we can deal with that just by covering it up. It's a beautiful thing. All right. Who inspired me for tonight's workshop? Normally, I will have some sort of inspiration. Either I see something in nature, I've taken a photograph, or I see somebody else's photograph. I'm on social media, or I have a huge library of art books. And so sometimes I'll just go perusing through my art books. And tonight, we are going to be inspired. Brave Intuitive Painting. This is a book by Flora Bowley. And I will have it linked in the description of the video on YouTube after the workshop is over. I go back and I add the links to the paints we're going to be playing with, to the book. And I also write an article on my website, and that will have the links in it as well. So, Brave Intuitive Painting. Oh my gosh, such a gorgeous book. But I'm going to warn you, it does not have projects in it. A lot of times, people who are at least beginner artists like to buy books that have projects step by step in them for you so that you can follow along and learn the technique. Flora in this book, Brave Intuitive Painting, This book is more of a motivation to artists, and it gives you lots of different eye candy. So pieces that she's done, as well as it just talks about process, the artistic process in general. So I want you to be aware of that, that it's not going to be a book that you buy and she steps you through her exact process. Okay. But if you're already an artist, you already understand the medium, the acrylics, for instance, on Whatnot, Barbara Florentine is an acrylic painter and she'll go live on Whatnot and she just paints and she's using acrylics. So she's already familiar with acrylics. And by reading through Flora's book, she can get insights into Flora's process. And, where she talks about breathing and, you know, connecting to your intuition and all that kind of stuff in here. But you can see there are a lot of tabs here because I did want to share some things with you in the book. I think it's a very worthy book to have in your library if you are an artist because there's just so much in here. It's jam packed with concepts like this one that says getting out of your way. Okay. Learning to tap into your intuition. But do you see how very soft and flowy that is? And the funny thing is, someone might look at the art and be like, "Oh wow, that's cool. I'm going to sit down and make one of those." And it's layer upon layer upon layer. It is not easy. Okay. Here she is in the book, just taking a big old leap. She's talking about taking a leap as an artist, being courageous. And she has nice quotes in here. So this page says, leap and the net will appear. Okay, so that kind of concept. Now, these two pages I just fell in love with, and I was actually looking at them as I was working on my paintings. So, your paintings are not going to look like my paintings, and my paintings are not going to look like Flora's paintings, okay? Because it's painting is a process, and unless you're doing a paint by number where you're just putting one layer of paint in one little section of a piece, um, your work's not going to look anything like anybody else's. We're all so unique. And so these are the pages that I was looking at as I was painting my artwork. And then here's this one right here. And I just love the way she puts down elements and then covers them up. So here there are lines in the background, and then she covered those lines partially, let some of it peek out with all of this softness. She wanted to soften that background. So just fabulous. And here she is. This is the size of her artworks. So do you see her standing next to a large canvas there on her wall? And the reason I wanted to show you this picture is because when I do these demos, I'm working on a little piece. When you work larger, it's easier, believe it or not. Some people are intimidated by that big canvas, but it really is easier to do this kind of work, this very intuitive work, when you're on a larger canvas. Trust me. Um, so here's one where she's talking about the variation in the quality of your marks and your colors. So we've got very, very, very light lights and dark darks. So there's a lot of contrast there, as well as here. There's a lot of contrast between the darkest darks and the lightest lights. And I can just hear it in my ears, my drawing teacher saying, contrast, Christina, add more contrast. Oy. So I'd always have to relook at my drawings and be like, okay, where do I need more dark, dark, dark and light, light, light? Ah, and then this one really inspires me. I love doing circles. So here she's doing ovals. And then what I wanted to show you here is you see these marks right here? That's from her fingers. So she puts her fingers in the paint and then goes over the top of her artwork and then makes those kind of fun marks. And that's why they can look so random, which is fabulous. I love that. I love that they are very random. Okay, and then, oh my gosh, this page is just out of sight. She's talking about an emerging palette. So hey, Mark V, welcome in. So, getting familiar with the colors and the color combinations that you like as an artist. And so, a lot of this exploration is she started with the primary colors. So, she started with a yellow, you can see yellow and red and green, or I'm sorry, blue, and then mixed some of those together to get some of these other colors. And then just started playing with it. As artists, we'll look at our paintings and say, oh, I like that part of the painting. And then you reproduce that some on your next painting, perhaps, right? But it can inform your artwork as a whole. So bear in mind, you can take a picture. So let's say she did this painting, you can take a picture of your painting and then cut up the painting into the parts of the painting that you like, what's going on there, and then put those in a journal. And that will help to inform you later when you're doing other artworks. Oh, yeah, I remember I liked this shape next to this color. And then you can go back, and that will help to create cohesiveness among your multiple artworks. Because, for instance, this page and this page are using the same colors, but a completely different feel to the artwork, right? Completely different feel. And so that's something that as you experiment with different color palettes, you can learn from. Okay, I'm trying to see if there's anything else here I wanted to share. Get the book, y'all. Get the book. It's the eye candy is just off the charts. If you like this sort of very ethereal, intuitive, soft edges painting. And there she is, just so you can see at the end of the book, there's Flora with one of her works behind her. Okay, so brave, intuitive painting is she says, let go, be bold, and unfold. So that is her book that is the inspiration for tonight. Ah, love it. Oh, you know what? There is one more tool that I forgot to tell you earlier, and it is dot tools. So I know that dot arts, like dot mandalas, are very popular. And a couple of the tools that are made for creating those kind of dots, besides her using her fingers to create dots, is this is called a ball stylus. And it has a small ball on this end and a small one on this end. So we can dip that into our paint and create little dots. And then this is a different kind of stylus here. It's just a plastic, but it has a nice end where you can dip that into the paint and then make dots with that. And they come in different sizes too. Where's the other one? This is a smaller one and this is a larger one. So it gives you larger dots, smaller dots. And then this is called a ball stylus as well, but it has much bigger balls on it. So it can give you bigger shapes, bigger round shapes. So I have these out because we're going to work with those later. Put this one away. And this, I'm not going to work with this particular ball stylus tonight. I like I like these a lot, believe it or not, the little rods. But if you have anything that's solid like that, where you can cut the end off, you can, or a lot of people will also use the end of a pencil. Tons of artists just use the end of a pencil and then they do their dots that way. So we can try that too. All right. I don't see any more questions. So we are going to go ahead over top of the table. Woohoo! Let's get some paper towels on hand. So we're ready for that. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm right here at Dietz Art. And my website, of course, dietzart.com, where you can get my latest articles and look up links to the art supplies on Whatnot. I sell the paintings, but if you say that you wanted some paint from one of my workshops, you can always go to my website and there's a link called Supply Links. You can check that out. And if you're on Whatnot and you want to follow me on YouTube, there you go, Tristina Dietz Artist, Dietz Elms Artist. If you just type Tristina and Artist, you should find me on YouTube. Okay, let's go ahead here and get started. I'm going to get out my palette paper that I showed you before. And let's just open this up so I have this close at hand. Oftentimes, if I'm working on something small like this is an 8" by 8". Wait, hold on, I'm gonna move my camera off the table here. Beep. Um, if I'm working on a smaller piece, I usually just put it right on top of the paper pad, the palette paper. You can also buy palette paper that's larger than this. This is a 9 by 12, but you can buy even larger ones. And so that they cover more of your table area when you're working, if you prefer that. Or, of course, you can just take some wax paper and put that out. I will often do that too. So let me cover over my other area here with the wax paper so you can see. So I'll just put wax paper there like that. That way I can just squeeze paint right onto the wax paper or right here onto the palette pad. All right. Let's go ahead then. Remember, this is my panel that I gessoed the front and the back. And see what I mean by I already got paint on here, but because I have gesso on the back, that helps. Now, what I watched some videos also that Flora Bowley has out on YouTube, and I will include a link to her YouTube in the description of the video when I add the description later tonight after the workshop is over. There are a couple of, she has a video on 5 different ways to start your painting. One of the ways is to use fluid paint. So paint like this or paint like this, which is a fluid, and just write. You can write or you can drip. So this is a combination of dripping and writing on here. This is the canvas pad. Let me show you the canvas pad here. So that's what I did here. This is acrylic. This is the fluid acrylics, the high flows. And I used a brush and I dipped in it and I also wrote all over it. So that is a good way to start a background. Or you can just put some color down and then like that and use a brush or use one of those tools I had shown you before to scrape it. So this was the catalyst tool and we are going to scrape it. Um, now what I want to do is put another color on there or do I just want to start with this one? Let's just start with this one. So you see how I'm getting, oh, isn't that color amazing? Thank you, Golden. So the color here is called teal. It just says teal. But this is a fluid, high flow paint, they call it, which you can use with airbrush. You can use it with a dip pen. There are a lot of different ways to use this paint. And so I'm just scraping it. It looks like nothing at this point, right? But that's the point. We're just getting something down on the surface. All right. And then let's take a little bit of this pink. This is from Artist Law. This is ink. And what I want to do with this is I want to put it on a brush. So I'm just going to put some of it out here on the palette pad. And I'm going to grab a small detail brush like this, just a tiny little brush, and dip it in the ink. Now I could wait for this to dry. I could also hit it with a heat gun, which I have right here. Come here, heat gun. It's stuck around my camera stand. So I do like to keep a heat gun around so that I can speed up the drying a little bit, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. We are working on a background, so it's not as important. So now I can put words here like laugh. Actually, there's an artist named Olga Sobi, Soby, and she does acrylic paint pours. But before she starts her pour, she uses acrylic paint on a brush and she writes her intentions for that piece on her canvas. So let's do laugh, love, right? And what's nice is you'll have writing in the background. Maybe some of it'll peek through later, maybe it won't. And that is a-okay. It's all right if it doesn't show through. What else do we want to say? Um, I'm just going to say happy. Hey, there we go. And now another thing that Laura Bowley tells you is turn it, turn, turn, turn. That's the title of one of her sections in her book. Turn, turn, turn. So it's okay. It doesn't, it can be omnidirectional. It doesn't have to be just in one direction. So let's do, there we go. Like that, just write right over my words. Some people like to think of this as automatic writing. Some people will get out a piece of paper and then just whatever thoughts come to mind, they just start writing. And so you can use this as a sort of meditation and an opportunity to do some automatic writing. And you're just filling in the background. Now, what if I want a different color? Let's say I want some sort of purple. Well, I can get purple by putting a little bit of blue in with pink, right? So I can either use this blue ink like this, pink. Oh, there we go. Or I can use an acrylic paint. Let's see, are we getting a decent purple out of that? If we're not, yeah, we're starting to get a purple. Okay, cool. Again, this is your background, so it does not matter. Let's put the word fly. There we go. And awesome. And, so if you don't like your handwriting, don't worry about it because only little bits of this are going to show through when the artwork is done, and they may not even show at all. So it's more of an exercise and a relaxation and a getting warmed up as part of the painting process, beginning to get your intuition engaged. Like, what word do I want to write? So I'm going to do laugh again here. If you notice, I'm not holding my brush like a pencil. I'm holding it like a Chinese brush like this, which is so that it'll go more up and down. I'm just more comfortable with that because I grew up in Asia and I've had a Chinese brush in my hands since I was a kid. Okay, so we're on the upside down now. Isn't that Stranger Things, the upside down, right? So what's one last word I can put on here? I'm going to put the word beautiful. Okay. There we go. So now I've got the beginnings of a background. I've got a bunch of words on there. I've got a layer of very thin inky paint. Now, what I try to do before I put this in water to clean it is I try to get as much of the paint off of it as I can before I put it in the water. That way your water on your table will last you longer, okay? You won't have to empty it out as often. There we go. Love that. Love, love, love that. Now, let me hit it with a heat gun for just a moment. So we can speed up that drying a little bit. That background is just about dry. Okay. I usually will work when I'm doing this type of painting, I will work on say 3 or 4 of them at one time, a series, because you're going to be creating in layers. Um, so an artist that I know, Bonnie Goldstein in Fort Lauderdale, she in her studio, she's an oil painter, and oil paint takes a long time to dry in between layers. So she always had about 10 paintings on the walls that she was working with because they were in different stages of being dry. And that's what she needed to do in order to be able to move on to the next one and let that one dry. So this is actually not quite dry there, but it doesn't matter. If there's an area that's not dry, but you want to speed it along, just take your paper towel and wipe over that and lift some of it up because you know what? It doesn't matter. We're building more layers. Oh, so it just doesn't matter. All right. Let's say that I want to cover a part of this with a, instead of this dark purple, I want a lighter lavender. So that's where I'm going to take my white. I always buy these big tubes or big containers of white because you're going to need a lot of it. You're going to go through it. So I've been asked before, is it okay to mix tube paints with inks like this? This is an acrylic and this is acrylic. So yep, it's perfectly fine to mix them together. Easy peasy. Now this is where something that I didn't tell you earlier, this is where a palette knife comes in handy. So this is my favorite type of mixing palette knife. It is offset. That means that it goes down before the blade. And that's helpful when you're mixing large amounts that you don't end up getting your knuckles all into your paint. So let's go ahead and mix the white in here and see what we get. Wow, that blue is really taking over from the pink, isn't it? Oh, but it is a nice sort of heathery. That's an interesting color, almost gray. So we might want to put a little more red and a little more blue in there. What I'm looking for is a lighter color that I can just cover a part of this with. That's actually very nice. Now, one of the things about acrylic paint though is I'm going to show you something. Acrylic medium, that means there's no color in it, just the medium by itself is white. So I'm looking for a tube of medium right here. So this is acrylic medium with no pigment in it, but can you see there in the tube that it's white? It's white when it's wet and it's clear when it's dry. And so what that means is that your paint is going to look lighter when it's wet and it's going to look darker when it's dry. Okay, so just be aware that it's a thing and that's going to happen. So even though this looks super light right now, when it dries, it could be darker. Now, I usually will not use this and palette knife to apply paint to my artwork unless I'm working on a really big piece. If I'm working on a big piece, I can do that. But if I'm working on a smaller piece like this, sometimes I will take a smaller palette knife, get the paint off like that. Oh, and I have huge ones of these, by the way, palette knives. I have massive palette knives for my big paintings. But these are my smaller ones for my demo desk. So there's some of the paint. You don't put the paint on the top, you put the paint on the bottom. And then let's cover some of this up. So we'll just go right here. Love this color. And it's actually a color. One of the tricks that you can do to make your paintings harmonious is to use colors that are already in here to create other colors. And that's what we did. We used this phthalo blue. Oh, no, it's Prussian blue and the pink individually. Or, well, first we used the pink, then we mixed a little Prussian blue in with it. And then we mixed some white with that. So all of these, the writing and this all talk to each other nicely. There we go. So we're just getting some more color on there. It doesn't matter. Remember I said it doesn't matter what you wrote because you're going to cover it up. And some people think, well, why bother? Well, it's part of the process. That's why. When we paint or draw, we're connecting to something divine. I think it's divine. And so we need to warm up when we're doing that and allow inspiration to come in. And so now I'm going to take some more and bring it over here and just eventually all that white is going to be covered up. But right now we're just playing with parts of it. Actually, a lot of times I don't even cover it all the way to the edges. So for instance, with this one right here, you can see that this edge is not covered. This edge is not covered. It's okay because when you mount this in a mat, the mat is going to cover those edges. So for instance, this goes in a 12 by 12 mat because it's an 8 by 8, 12 by 12 hole. So when I put that on there, like that, you can see for the most part, I covered up the white. There's only a tiny bit of white right down here, which is fine. But that's it when you put it in a mat. So I usually don't worry about the edges. I also like when there's a little bit of white showing around the edges because then it just shows you can see like the brush strokes or the fact that somebody's hand put it on there, and you can it helps you to see that it's an original work of art. Okay, let's do this. Sometimes I will hold it if it's a smaller piece so that I can turn it a little more easily. Now all the words are gone. Bye bye. But it's okay. It's just part of the process. There we go. I like using a palette knife because I like the texture that the palette knife gives. If I hold it up close here, you should be able to see a bunch of texture there, right? So I love that. A lot of times oil painters like to make super smooth paintings, and it shows their skill in being able to blend colors together and get that seamless um, ability to go from one color to the next. But in acrylic painting, I like to put lots of texture in it because I can. Even when I oil paint, I put lots of texture in it because I like texture. Okay, so now we've covered up. You can still see some of the writing under there, but we have covered up most of it. And we have nice colors that talk to each other. Fantastic. Yee. Now we need to set that aside and let it dry. But we're going to start with using the heat tool so that we can begin to get it. We can start it on its way to drying. There we go. Now notice I'm moving my heat tool around pretty quickly. If you keep your heat tool in one place on an acrylic painting for too long, what happens is it will bubble. The plastic in it will begin to bubble. So if you don't want bubbles in your paint, keep the tip of your heat tool moving. So the reason I like to do this is it starts the drying process, it warms the surface, and that helps the water to evaporate more quickly. It's not completely dry. If I put my finger in here, you see how I have paint on it. So I'll just deposit that somewhere else. Why not? I'll just put my fingers in it. Like Flora does. She uses her fingers in her artwork a lot. But you can see it was not dry. But this is just, again, this could be an underlayer that may disappear. So those first couple of layers, do not worry about that. Now this one, we're ready for another layer. It's actually the same size as this paper. So I'm going to move this paper out of the way. Over here, next to it. Okay. You only have limited view here. So I'm trying to keep it in view. There we go. Nice. Okay. So now this was putting these fluid paints, just like we did on the last one. The first layer was the fluid paints, but instead of using a wedge like this and scraping it out, I used a water bottle and I sprayed it, and that allowed the paint to flow. So I'm going to do just a little bit of that real quick. Like, let me pick a color. Let's do this red. So that's one of the nice things about using inks or using these high flow paints, is that they will drip very easily. So let me put some red spots on here. Haha. See how I just closed it? That's why I don't understand why I left those other two open before. What the heck? Okay, so you can see just by itself that it's fluid enough that it will drip. So let me show you that. You see how it's dripping just on its own? Lovely. And then if I want it to get more diffused like those, I just bring a water bottle and I start spraying. There we go. And then I get a more diffused look. Do you see that? So, there's some water coming down here and here. I'm gonna put it this way. I want drips going in both directions here. And then with this one, I even turned it the other directions as well. So I'm getting some drips going this way. And then I'm going to do some drips this way. So by doing it and turning it, as Flora likes to say, in all the different directions, I'm getting the paint to flow and give me these little drips everywhere. Is anything flowing here? Yeah, it is. Just about. I usually will put a paper towel under it where I see that the drips are coming. And there we have some more lovely drips over here. And you might look at it and go, oh my gosh, Christina, that just looks like a hot mess. But all it is putting down color in the background. Okay. It's all right. Because there's no crying in acrylics. If I didn't like what ended up, I could cover the whole thing over, couldn't I? Yes, I could. Now, another thing that can be fun to do is just to take your paper towel and lift some of this in different areas. And so I've got a lot of that, but I've also got some staining going on here. So I think that staining, like my hands are stained from earlier, I think that staining is very cool. And maybe I want to put some of this over here. So now I'm pushing hard to deposit some of it. I've got some interesting marks here. Okay, nice. Let's do some right here. So I've got a lot of interest building there, right? Yee. If I want some more drips, more water, yeah, and just let her drip. Let her rip. And it's just dripping right down like that. Let's see, I will show you that in just a moment. So you can do this process and have it drip in different directions, and then decide later which direction you like the orientation of the painting to be in, and then paint based upon that. There we go. So you see all of this in here. Lots of drippy goodness. Love that. Love, love, love that. And in the background, I also have some writing. So you can see a letter here, some words here, but you can't really read the words, right? Because it doesn't matter. That's not the point. The writing is just a starting point, a jump off point. I like how the blue and the red here are combining to create that little bit of a lavender or purple color. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you should be able to see that. Isn't that cool? So when you put subsequent layers, sometimes it changes the color because they're optically blending. Now there's a little bit of the turquoise here. I want some more turquoise. So let's take the teal, and I'm going to put a little bit of teal here and a little bit more here. Why not? Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to spray it. Spray it. Well, maybe I won't spray it. Maybe I'll just do this first and see what happens. That's cool. Ooh, it's going fast. It is dripping fast. Okay. And then let's hold it this way. More water. And get it to drip down. Nice. Nice. I like it. I like it. This one over here is about to drip. And then let's turn it this way, add a little bit more water, get it to drip in the opposite direction. Woo, here it goes. Okay. Now, if there's a bunch of paint on the end there, lots of times I will just dab it off because I don't want it to get underneath. I'm trying to keep the underneath because this is a pad. I'm trying to keep the underneath somewhat clean. So I don't want there to be too much paint on the edge there. Nice. Now we have a lot of fabulous drips going. I can see I need some more drips going in this direction, off the edge. Yes. Okay, cool. So now I have drips. I have drips on this edge, I have drips on this edge, I have drips on this side, and drips on that side. So that makes me happy. That way I feel like we've got some balance going, which y'all might be like, balance? What the heck are you talking about? But that's part of experimentation in your painting. There, I like that way better. Way better. We got a little purple going on here, some heavy reddish pink, some dark blue, and then the turquoise. Nice combination. Now, guess what we have to do with this? It's going to have to be dried a little bit and then set aside, right? Because we need that to dry before we come back. If you were not aware, what I'm working on here is a canvas. It's a canvas pad. So this is just a thin canvas. And I love when I'm experimenting or learning a new technique or working with oil pastels or something like that. I like to work on these primed, they already have gesso on them, primed canvases to experiment on. Okay, now there is a big hair in there, a big hair. So let's take a needle tool or, oh, here I have an X-Acto knife. Let's get that big hair out right now. There's so much dog hair, even though my dogs passed away this spring, there's still so much dog hair in the air of my house that I often will find my hair or my dog's hair in my artwork. And so it's handy to have a needle tool or a knife around to do that. Now, this is still very wet in certain areas, so I'm going to take another paper towel and I'm going to go in here and lift some of that out just to speed things along. Normally, I would just set it aside and let Mother Nature do its thing there. But since we need to move this along, I am going to pick some of it up so it'll dry faster for us. Okay, woo, there we go. Nice, 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 nice. I am very happy with that. Sometimes you want a dark background or you want a light background. Um, because when you're building layers on top, if you have a very dramatic dark background, that can help you in that you're going to be putting areas of lightness on top of it. And I like that. So I actually like a dark background where this is kind of going here with some dense color. Um, It's fun too, though, to work on the lighter backgrounds, which is what we have here. But I love the drama of the dark backgrounds. Oh my gosh, they're so cool. Okay, let's see how we're doing. There's a little bit of wetness here. So what are we gonna do? We're just gonna pick up that little bit of wet paint because I'm like, whatever, let's just move it along, right? It doesn't matter. Okay. So, what are some other colors that will go with this? At this point, I can make a shape if I want to and start building around the shape, or I can continue building layers. That is totally up to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a shape so that I can show you how you can start to make your shapes come to life. Okay. So this one, I want to put some sort of shape in there and then begin building either dark or light around that shape. So what would be a good easy, we need an easy shape. And to do the shape, I can use an acrylic marker, or I really like using this carbon black from Golden of the high flow. So I'm just going to put a little bit of it out. It doesn't take much, just a tiny bit to make your shapes. And here I'm cleaning it off. Trying to keep things somewhat clean. I'm glad this one wasn't open when I shook it. Right. Okay. Once again, we're going to our detail brush. This is a master's touch. So it's from Hobby Lobby. They have really nice brushes, like their mixed media brushes. This works for acrylic or for watercolors. Water media is what it's best for. So I'm just going to get some of the black here. Do not even worry if the line's too thick, because you can always cover parts of it up with your paint, your opaque paint. So not to worry. Um, let's say that I want to do, I really like this area over here. So I'm going to do a flower like this. So we're just drawing something in there with our little brush. And then another one out here. Like I said, I could continue building more layers, but if I'm ready to get started, if I feel like I have good layers and I'm ready to get started on the actual artwork, then I just come in. You don't have to use black. You can use red, you can use blue, any color that you want. I can even just do a couple of, with the black, I can do a couple of shapes here and just not worry about it because they may get covered up, right? And maybe only little bitty bits of them show up. Let me do this. And then I also want to do, uh, I'm going to do a leaf that comes out like this. So now we've got a flower and a leaf there. I'm going to do a few more of these little ones while I have the black out here and it's wet. If there's a particular shape that you like, shout it out. I'm not really good at animals. Let's do maybe I'm trying in my mind's eye to come up with like a bird. There, one of the pieces that Laura has in her book, she just has what looks like the big head of a bird with like a beak here. And like I said, do not worry about things being perfect. This is just about exploration, not about having it perfect. So she just did something crazy like that, just about the shape. When you look at the shape, you recognize the shape. And so that's okay. It does not have to be perfect. All right, let's put one more of these there. There we go. So that's just a for instance, okay? You can be a little more purposeful when you're doing it. Remember, if you don't like something, we can just cover it up. It's just that simple. We can just cover it up. So what I'm thinking is I'd kind of like this to be gray over here. So if I take a little bit of that white and I put it out here and I sort of put it over there near where the bird is, if I decide, oh, I don't like that bird, it's not a problem. Let me take another brush. So this is a little angle brush. And so I'm just going to come in here with the white. And because the the black is still wet, I can sort of gray it out by doing this, right? Right over top of it. It's like, ah, if I wanted to completely cover it and not get the gray, I could just wait till it was dry and put a couple more layers of paint over it. There we go. So maybe I want to sort of leave that gray there as a bit of a shadow. And that's okay. So I'm just putting a little bit of the white in. That's the titanium white. If you're wondering what the color is, it's called titanium white. Right there, titanium white. Okay. And all different brands make it. But you know what? This one is the Academy level, #1. But all of them have titanium white in them. That's the pigment. Here, titanium dioxide, PW6, it says right there what the pigment is. So get the cheapest white, okay? You don't have to buy an expensive white. That's a trick that I use. What you'll find sometimes is the more expensive whites just have more white in them and less binder, less carrier. But, experiment with that. But in the beginning, just get your cheapest white. Just look on the label and see if it has titanium white in it. PW6, and you are good. You're good to go. Okay. So there we go. We've got some softness going there. We've got that area sort of pushed. I call that pushing the area back, right? You're pushing that back, you're covering it over it a little bit. So you have an opportunity to come in there and put something else in that area. Now, I've been waiting for this to get dry, mostly dry. Let's go ahead with some of the whites. I'm actually going to use the small round here because I'm going to take the whites. I like to put a base of white inside my shapes and then come back in later with whatever color I want. And that way, the color that I put in it is very vibrant on top of the white. Now, you don't have to do this. If you want the base, more of the base color to show through, you don't need to put the white on there. This is also where I can fill in the lines a little bit more, cover the lines up a little bit if I want the lines to look uh, thinner and not so chunky. This is where I would do it with my white. I would just cover over parts of it. So the line was a little bit less uh, chunky. So let's do that here. Fine. Right. If you end up covering up too much of the black later, you can just come in with either a black acrylic marker or some more of the paint you were working with and put the line back in. So at this point, you don't worry whether lines get covered up or not. Nice. So that's beginning to sit on top now. It draws the eye, right? Your eye gets drawn right to that spot right there. Yay. And do I want to fill in the leaf? I want to fill in the leaf, but I'm not going to use white this time. I want to use a paint that's not quite so um, opaque. So here is the Americana. It's a beautiful sage mint green, and it's a fluid paint. So that means it's going to be a little less dense because it's fluid. So let's put some out here. It's still opaque, but I'd say it's more of a semi-opaque. So let's pick that up here. because it's fluid. And what I want is I want some of what's underneath there to show through. I don't want to completely cover it. I'm okay if some of the design underneath shows. Okay, cool. Sometimes it'll look like it's covering more of it, but then once it's dry, more shows through. So if you look here where that white is beginning to dry, it's actually, you can begin to see what's underneath there, which I call that history. Those layers underneath, I consider history. So I think it's really cool when you can leave some history like that. All right, I love that green. Now there's another one here, the folk art. I love this pink. So I'm going to take some of the pink on the flowers right there. Yay. Let's see here. So I'm not even worrying too much whether my brush is clean or not. I'm just going to put some in here because remember, it's each layer is just a process. If you don't like it, if I didn't like one of my flowers after I was done with it, I can literally just paint right over top of it, which is why I say there's no crying in acrylic because everything can be changed. Now, the crying may come when you look back at a layer that you did and you say, oh my gosh, I really liked the layer before that. So sometimes, and I've done this before too, as you're working on your various layers, sometimes I take pictures of a layer before I get started with a significant change to the piece, because sometimes I do want to remember what was there. If I like what I put down and I say, "Ooh, I really like that," snap a picture of it so you can save it for later. So there we go. There's the pink. As it dries, it gets darker, right? That's what I'm seeing here. So the flowers are starting to pop. Now, to me, the real magic comes when we start to define the outside area. So let me just, you know what, I want to do some dots before that. And I have some of this green left over. So this is where your hands can come in, or, oh, let's use one of these tools. So this tool that I told you I really like. So I'm just dipping it in the paint and putting some more because I like to have a color in multiple places on my artwork. It, I find it helps to keep your artwork cohesive if you can find those colors in different areas. Now, I may end up covering these up, right, with other paint, but it doesn't matter because one or two of them may show through, and that's the point. So here we go. I'm watching for questions. If anybody has any questions, spirals, someone said. What is it? Margie said, put in spirals. I usually leave my spirals toward the end because I love spirals and I like to use them on the top. So yes, the spirals play big in my spirals and circles and ovals. I do a lot of those. Okay, let's put some more down here. I'm almost out of the green. There's not a lot of difference. If you look here, there's not a lot of difference between the value, and we've talked about values before in previous classes, but the value of this green and the value of this purple are just about the same. So there's not a lot of contrast there. And that's okay on your lower levels where you're going to be covering up certain sections, right? But if you're working on your top, your layers closer to the top, you want to bear that in mind, and you might want to do something in order to make contrast between that the two that are almost the same value, totally different colors but very similar in value. so they don't stand up against each other. See, I'm almost out of paint here, which is fine. It's fine. This is one way that I like to use up leftover paint. Okay, cool. So we have a bunch of dots here. Excellent. And I could have used my fingers like Laura, I don't know why I keep calling Laura, but it's Flora. So let's use one of our fingers and pick some of that up and just put some spots. Some artists, I know an artist that likes to make really soft little, she'll do this and make soft little marks, which are just beautiful, I think. Soft marks. So it's not a defined mark like those little dots, they're just soft. Okay. Yes, your hands are going to be dirty when you're done with this. And these paints are non-toxic, so don't eat them. Don't let your kids put them in their mouth. But you see this AP on here? If it says AP, it's been tested to be sure that it's non-toxic. Okay. Mm. I love the direction this one's going in. Love the direction with the soft colors. But now we need to get dramatic because those soft colors are, again, everything's in that mid-range sort of color except the black and white. So we want to build some drama in there. And that means I want to put some darker colors in. Uh, let us do something. Let me see what color. Let's go a little bit darker with our green. So this is a phthalo green. Let's pull this one out. This is the high flow. Whew. I'm just going to put some of it directly on there instead of wiping it away, right? There we go. All right. So let's go ahead and use some of this. Yes, you may end up covering up some of your other paint. That's okay. So what I like about the phthalo colors, so it says PHTH. I'm going to show you. See where it says PHTHALO? That's phthalocyanine, and that tells me the color is transparent. So whatever is underneath it, if there's writing underneath it, if there's collage underneath it, that's all going to show up because the color itself is transparent. Okay, I'm going to use a little bit of water here. Just a little bit of water. And then bring it out. See, I just covered up that flower. Oopsies. But I'm not worried about it because it's okay. It's all good. Here, I can just lift some of it. There we go. What I'm wanting to do is I want the darkest bit here and then I want to soften the rest of it. So I'm just pulling it out so I have a soft edge. I'm letting my brush dry. So I need a little bit more darkness here. So just by putting more layers on, you're going to get the intensity. Right. And then feather it out. So now what happens is because that leaf in here is light, this dark is helping to contrast with the light. And then that helps to make this shape come forward. Okay, that's how we bring these shapes forward. So that's nice. I like that color in there. I want it to be a little bit darker down along the head here, this bird, kind of birdish shape. You can use your fingers at this point too to help feather those edges. I've got a little water on here. So I'm just feathering the edge. Because when you look at Flora Bowley's artwork, the edges are so soft where one color goes into another color. And at first I was thinking, how the heck does she get those edges so soft? And then I realized she's using her hands and she's softening all of her edges like that as she's painting. So isn't that cool? That's what I discovered anyway from watching her videos. I'm like, ah, okay, she's using her hands to do that. Now let's say that over here, instead of using the same color, I want to use a different color. What if I use let's say I want to use this quinacridone red. Now, again, see where it says quinacridone right there? Most people just call it quin. That's a transparent color. Now they're telling you right up here along the edge, transparent, so that you know. Whereas this one, which is teal, is opaque. So there's actually white in here. Let's see, it says PW6 is the first color, and that is what? It's titanium white. Okay. So you know that this is a semi-opaque or an opaque color because it has white in it. Okay. But this one is transparent. Let's see what happens when we put a little bit of this red out there. Oh, birdie. Same thing. I'm just gonna, oh, I like the dots actually. Maybe I'll just do some dots on this side. They're looking lovely. Interesting, right? What you can discover. Not bad, not bad, not bad. Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. And that's okay. It's okay to not know, y'all. It is okay. I'm going to use that same brush because I don't care. I don't care if it gets dirty or not. Now let's maybe I leave the dots over here. Let me just soften this part right here. Add some color in and leave those dots there. There we go. And I just used a lot of water with that because the brush had a lot of water on it. But the cool thing is it's transparent, so you can see right under it at this point. Let's just go around here. Interesting, interesting. So I'm going to have to let it dry and then come on with another layer, which this is called glazing. So when you do a very wet layer and then you let it dry and you see what it looks like, and then you come back and then you can put another layer in, and that helps to, that lets it glaze. Now, it's not soft here. I've got a definite line and I want to soften it. So I'm just going to come in with my fingers and I'm going to soften that edge. Okay, cool. Cool, cool, cool. So we're beginning to see something here. Let's do this right here and then soften those edges. Nice. But can you see how it's glazing and you can still see underneath there? But you can decide later if you want to put more and more and more layers in there in order to cover that, or if you like leaving it where you can see what's underneath it. Okay. So that's how I build some of those layers. I really like what the writing that's over here. So I'm definitely going to want to use the transparency here to darken this, but at the same time, keep the keep to where I can see what's underneath it. Okay, here, soften those edges. Soften it. So what I like to do and what she does, Laura Bowley in her works, is she's going to be pushing, pushing, pulling, pushing, pulling, pushing here, pulling here. Okay. So lights and darks. We're very light right now, which makes it easier for us to see what's going on in the background. Um, Let me put something maybe over here that's more light. So let's take this one here. This is an Americana. Bahama blue, one of my favorite colors. So let's just put this out. It's a little bit opaque, so I call it semi-opaque. And let me clean this off so we don't have red all over it. All right. So let's take the Bahama blue and come in here. This is a little bit more opaque. You can see a little bit underneath it, but it is more opaque. And if you add a little bit of water to it, that'll also make it a little more transparent if you want it to be transparent and show through, and soften the edges like that. Okay, so now we're pushing the rest of that back, right? You can see a little edge right there, but we're introducing that color. Now, like I said, I don't like a color just to be in one area. It needs to be in multiple areas. So let's bring some of the blue down here next to this black, because there's a contrast between the black and this light blue, right? Nice contrast. Let's do that. And then soften the edges. And I want to soften the edge over here where it meets up with that darker green, right? Okay, cool, cool. So we've got some of it here and some of it here. Some artists will say you want it to appear in 3 places on your painting. It just depends. Depends on the artist, depends on the artwork. It's beginning to shape up. I like where it's going. And let's see, anything else I can throw at this at the moment? I'm thinking maybe some dark purple up here. Leave some of the light purple and go with some dark purple. So let me see where my dark purple is. Oy, I'm gonna have to come over here to my collection of paints and find one. Is this a dark purple? Wait, nope, that's a dark blue. So bear with me just a moment. There it is. It's all the way on the bottom. It's not where my blues are. I thought it was going to be with my blues, but it's not. Okay, so this is the Hebio Origins paint, and this is ultramarine violet. So it's going to be a dark. You see how it's dark right there? A dark violet. So what I want to do, I'm going to turn this around. And again, turn, 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 right? Because you can get a different view when you turn. And sometimes it's easier to work this direction than it is to be up here working upside down like that. So let's put some of this out here. Nice. And it says it's a transparent color. Or no, I'm sorry, it says it's an opaque color. If it's transparent, it looks like this. The little block has nothing in it. So that's good. An opaque color right now would be good. So I'm using a small brush so I can be a little more detailed here. And what I want to do is I want to leave some of that light purple there and then fill in, sort of go around this so that I have some of that light, uh, sort of heathery purple still showing. And then I start building up a dark purple around it. There we go. Let's bring the dark purple maybe down here to sort of meet that red a little bit and soften the edges. Nice. Softening, softening. So I need a lot more of this now. So now I can bring one of the bigger brushes in. Can you see that okay? I'm looking and just saying, oh, I see a bunch of writing over top of it. Let me try moving it up a little bit for you. Okay, so let's pick up more of the purple. Come up here. have one of these soft green circles here, so I'm just going to sort of go around it. And then later I'll put a little bit more of that soft green in there so that it looks like a nice soft circle. Oh, thanks for the hearts. I appreciate it. See some hearts over there on YouTube. Thank you. Thank you. Now this time I'm going to be aware of this, this little pink, uh, the little pink flower. So I am not going to go over the pink flower this time. Okay. I'm going to go around it, but I'm not going to go over it like I did down there. There we go. Now this is not as opaque as it's saying that it is straight out of the tube, but part of it could be too that my brush is wet, quite wet. Okay, hold this up here, bring this down here a little bit more. As it dries, you can get a thicker layer on there. But what I wanted you to see is that sometimes I like to leave a little bit. I like to leave that because the lines are black. Let's do that. Because the lines are black, I like to leave a little bit of that lighter color that was behind it, almost like a halo, right? Can you see that around it? And then go dark. And that way it'll help to make that pop against the black against the purple. Soften the edges. Soften. You're going to continuously soften the edge with your fingers. Okay, cool. Come on, purple. Nice purple. What was the color again? It's called ultramarine violet, they call it. There we go. So you're going to build up layer, 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 layer. And now this part over here, I need to add a little more color and then soften it. Soften the edge. Same over here. Soften, soften. Sometimes you can just sort of pull it out like I'm doing here. Okay. So we're getting somewhere, right? We are getting somewhere. We can begin to see the imagery pop out. We've got light areas, we've got darker areas. All right. We've got soft edges. Actually, I think I need to bring this in here just a little bit more. Yee! To get some color all the way out there. There we go. Yeah. Soften the edges. There we go. So now we've got that looking a little bit better up in the corner there. So I can just keep building layers as they dry if I want more intensity. Come on now. Yeet. Right there. Nice. That's fun. And I left those little red spots right there. We'll see what they look like when they dry. They're still wet, so we won't really know what they're like until they're dry. So we're going to set this one aside for a little bit and come back to it. But that's how I push and pull and soften the edges and build in various colors. Now let's take a look at one that's a little farther along in the background. This one right here. I need to move this because it's so big. Okay. So what I've done here, oh, look, see, I splattered that. That's okay. So in the beginning here, I made a layer, and this is the Canson XL paper. Okay, so it's watercolor paper. And I did not tape it down. You can pull them off of here. If I wanted to be sure, let's put it this way. If I wanted to be sure that this paper stayed flat while I was working on it, I would tear a blank sheet off, soak it in water, then bring it to the bring it to a board of some sort. And then I would use like a washi tape or a masking tape that would not hurt the paper. And I would tape it down. Uh, that way, it's been soaked. And when you start to work on it with a wet medium like this, it's less likely to curl like this is all curled up. Okay. Most of the time, I don't worry about it. I just come in here and I work on the paper and I don't worry about the curl. Because after my artwork is done, I can put the artwork between some books. I'll put the wax paper or parchment paper in between here and in between my books. And then that way it will flatten it. It flattens it. Just before you flatten it on the back, if the back of the paper has not been painted on or anything, just spray the back with water and then sponge it, like rag it down with a rag so it's damp, and then put it underneath your books with the parchment paper or the wax paper in between, and that will flatten it for you if you leave it like 24 hours or so. Okay. So, not to worry, you can flatten it back down later. What I did here is I put a soft layer of color first, and that's what's in the background, this light green and this light pink. Okay. So that it had one layer of acrylic on it in soft colors. And then I came back over top of it and I used some of the fluid here and then sprayed it with water and let it run so you can see the drips in different directions. I also, this dark color is put on with a brush. I wanted some darks and some lights to work with. And I also used my fingers, and you can see fingerprints all around here in blue and red. Okay, so that's what I did with that one to create a background. So again, I can go on top of this now. The fun thing is you can use white for your lines as well. So let's take this and let's create a design in white instead of creating a design in black, right? Okay. So this is just the titanium white paint. I make sure I have plenty of water on my brush so it will flow off the brush. And then in the dark area is where I can do my design. Maybe I did some leaves here and some scribble, and that was with a Neo Color 2 crayon. So you can use your water soluble pencils or your water soluble crayons. I could have done the same thing with my Magnus. That's this right here. So this is a big water soluble pencil. Same sort of thing. You just, while it's still wet, I scribbled in it. So I'm putting leaf designs. So right here using the white, let me just do another leaf design here. So you don't always have to do it in black. You can really do it in any color that you want. And then here. So what I'm doing is repeating a pattern. I have a leaf here and a leaf here, and now I'm going to put a couple more leaves on here. And then I'm just going to bring this down like this. This is a pattern that I do a lot. It's one of my favorite patterns, but you may have your own favorite pattern that you like to do. And then I'm going to go next to this one. So I'm going to go here, again with the white. And then I'm going to do a leaf out here. There we go. And you can see that when you do the light color against a light color, you don't have a lot of contrast, right? But when you do the light color against the dark color like here, then you get lots of nice contrast. Okay, I'm just going over it again to thicken that up. I could have used an acrylic marker, only if the surface is dry though. So for instance, I have a Posca marker over here. Let me find it. Where did I put it? Here it is. So this is a white Posca pump marker. So I'm having to pump it to get the paint mixed up. Make sure you always pump a pump marker. Okay. And then you don't want to start it on your artwork unless you really don't care and you're on one of your lower layers. You want to start it over here so that you don't get a blob out. And then I'm just gently going over top of this because it's more or less dry now. But I'll show you in just a second how I could do this. And this is acrylic paint, okay? So let me do this up here. So now it is just the Posca marker. And Posca makes their tips in different sizes. So this is just the one that I like to use because I use it for dots a lot. So there are a couple of those leaves right there. I'm gonna go back over top of here just to sort of square up the line there. Okay, but what this is great for is dots. I love using this for dots. Let's see if we can put some dots over here on this one while that dries for a second. Eek. So that is not dry yet, but this is dry. So if on the dark, I like to put light dots. So I could come here. And so this is an acrylic marker on top of acrylic paint, which is fine. It works beautifully, right? Just to accentuate that. You can see the white dots there. Love it, love it. Love using these white dots in the dark areas. It really like brings your eye to it. And another thing that I like to do besides dots is I like to do dashes. I like to make it look like it's raining. So I may just paint over this, but I will show you right now. I do uneven, sort of almost like Morse code, like that. And then like that. And then I might put a few dots in the middle, like that. So I build something like that. And sometimes I do it up and down. Other times I do it across. So I might draw some lines in here, like this, like that, right? So that's what Posca pens like this can be good for. This one is a PC3M. That's the size of the tip. And it says the tip is a 0.9 to 1.3 millimeters. Okay, that's how you read these Posca paint markers. And then of course I've shown you before the Pebeo markers. So a marker like this is an acrylic marker. It's also a pump marker. You also want to start it and not on your artwork. Make sure the paint is flowing. And then I can also come in here and do more dots if I wanted to do dots of a different color. This one's too close to the green, so you don't see it very well, but they're there. There they are. So these are also an acrylic paint marker, which is great for doing details on there. Another thing I like those markers for is working inside here, inside the white areas. So let me take, what would be a good color for that? I like the fluorescent pink. So see the fluorescent pink marker? Yeah, just one of my favorites. Let's put it on here. Make sure it's working. Yeah. Okay. So now I can come in here. Oh my goodness. She is beautiful. and just, it makes it easier if you have a marker to sort of fill these in. You can do it with a brush too, but I like the convenience of using the brush like that. I mean the pen, the marker. So that's an acrylic marker. Once that dries, if I don't like that color, what can I do? I can just paint right over top of it, right? That's the beauty of working with acrylics. I can just paint right over top. And let's go back to this one now. Nice. So let's see how this one is developing. Now I've got some nice dark over here. So I want to put something light in here, but sometimes I like to use a beige instead of using a white. And so what I'm doing here is I'm using a transparent burnt sienna. Burnt sienna is a good color to have in your palette for earthy colors. Just putting a little bit of it out there. This is an ink, but you can get it in tube paint as well. And then I'm going to use a little bit of my white here. And I'm going to create sort of a pale color. Actually, I want a drop of yellow too, because I want it to be a little bit yellowish. I think let's put one. So see how I'm using, I used ink, I'm using high flow, I'm using tube paint. So you can just mix and match all of your acrylic, okay? It is a-okay. This yellow is very stainy, as you can see from it being all over my hands. Oh my gosh. Okay, so here's some of the white. Let's mix this in. What I want to get is just a well, there's a color called Titan Buff or Ivory, and that's kind of the feel I want to get. There we go. We're getting there. We're getting it. Nice. Because the colors in this piece are very cool. The light green and the blue and the red is actually a cool red. And what I want is I want to introduce a little bit of warmth into the piece. So I'm going to use, see how I mixed up sort of a creamy color? So while this is dark and this is dark, I'm going to put like a creamy color in here. It still has a lot of yellow in it, and you can see a lot of yellow in the background of this painting. So it still works. There we go. Nice. So this gives me sort of a warmy, buttery yellow to put in there. Nice. Now, if I need it to be darker for the other two, because this one up here in the corner is against a light background. So I want that leaf to be a little bit darker in order to get it to sort of pop off there. There we are. Oh, you're so pretty. So pretty. All right. So I want this one. This one, I can see how there's more paint on there. So I can just mix a little bit more of that paint in there, and that'll make it similar, but slightly darker, which is fun. And then the other one up in the corner, I'm going to make even more dark, because I'm always looking in my painting for that contrast between light and dark, right? You don't have to do that, but it really does help to make your painting successful if you get lights next to darks. And that will cause the images, the stuff to pop off. Okay, so lightest, a little bit darker. This one up here, I'm gonna make even darker since the background is very light right there. And see how I'm going right over top of that other leaf? That's okay. Actually, it's not even dark enough for me. Is it? Are you dark enough? You're not dark enough. Now, part of this leaf is next to the dark. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make the tip darker and leave the rest of it that sort of creamy color. It's okay if your leaves here are two-tone, that's fine. Let's see if some of this black is still wet. Nope. What about some of this green? Is that still wet? A little bit. I'm just looking for if there's a way I can darken this without getting more paint out. Not really. Okay, I need a little bit more of this brown. There we go. What I want to do is I want the tip of this to be darker because it's light out here, right? So let's do this. I'm watching. I'm going to look real quick and see if there are any questions. Nope, no questions there. And no questions there, just spirals. So I got to put some spirals on here, right? So I just added a little bit of that transparent burnt sienna. Now I've got a darker color here. Okay, let's close this ink so that I don't, so I don't spill it. No, 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 no spilling. Okay. So now I'm coming in here with a little bit darker on the tip. Not dark enough. Come on. Darker, darker. There we go. Darker, 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 darker. So that's better. And what? I want to combine it with the bottom. I want a soft edges, right? So I'm sticking my finger in there to get those soft edges. Not quite dark enough. Let's go just a little bit darker up here. Now I could just wait for it to dry and then add another layer, and that would help to darken it more as well. But you're going to notice if you look at it now, you see how it is creamier at the base and darker at the tip, right? And why is that? Because it's dark here and it's light here. So it's okay if your leaves are two-tone. Let's make this leaf two-tone as well because it's lighter up here. Why not? Why not? We can do that. Okay, and then use the finger to blend it. Okay. Put those soft edges. Okay, so who here is going to try the finger blend? Who's going to try it? It really is a lot of fun to get your fingers involved. If you watch, if you go back, when I add the link to Flora Bowley's um, YouTube channel later to this video, if you watch her, her hands are very much involved with her painting. Very much. Okay, cool. I guess I'll do the tip of this one a little bit darker too, just to sort of keep it in line with the other ones. Let's do it. And then just bring my, let's do this so we can blend it, blend it, blend it, blend it. Okay, there we go. So now we have a little bit of variation there. This I would like to be darker. I'd like these two to be darker at the tip. So let's see if I can grab a little bit darker. It's really the contrast between the light and the dark. Okay, not dark enough. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some of this ink out on my palette. So I keep reaching over to the side because I'm working on my palette paper. So here I'm just gonna put one drop of the dark, and then I'm gonna close this up so don't spill it. And I'm just gonna grab the dark because it's a transparent color. So let's see what happens. Yeah, that's better. I just grab the dark and I put it there. Now I've got more of a dark tip there. I just covered up a little bit of the white, but you know what? It does not matter because I can come back later and using that marker, I can put more of the dark in there, right? I mean, more of the white, right? It doesn't matter. Okay, let's take a little bit more of the transparent brown. Nice. Like I said, that color is burnt sienna, and it's a good one to have in your collection for sure. There we go. Now we've got some interest going in those leaves, right? Because you can see the darker tips. Nice, that's fun. All right, I like where this is going. Let's do some more dots. While I have some paint here, I'm just going to put my fingers in there. And then I'm going to put some more dots over here. And then what else? Now, what she does often is she'll just put her fingers in a couple of whatever colors she has there. Whatever she's got going on. Let's do a little bit of the pink too. One, two, three. Let's do that. Right? And then that's where she takes her fingers and then she's like putting, that's where you see the variation in the dots on her artwork is like that. You see those spots. So your paint doesn't really go to waste. You can reuse up the leftover paint like this. And when you're working on a much larger canvas, then these dots look smaller, don't they? In terms of the scheme of things, let's put some more over here, whatever I have left. Just put some more. Okay, cool. So I've got some more going on there for that theory of having a color in more than one place, right? Oh, okay. Let's just wipe this off here. And now I would want to, down here, I would want to darken this a little bit. So let's take is this the Prussian blue? No, that's the phthalo blue, which is transparent, lovely. And I think it's the same color that's up here. So let's just darken this little area right here. Yee. And so this is the high flow. I'm just going to put a little bit of it out. Now I could just put it directly on here and then just use a brush. That's not closed. I have to remind myself it's not closed. Let me take this brush that I had shown you earlier, which is the catalyst brush with the black. Oftentimes, if people are using a dark color, they like to use a black brush. Okay, I'm leaving a little bit of space in between there. So I'm not going directly up to the white. Cool. Now this is a transparent color. So it's just creating a glaze over top of there. And then I'm going to soften the edge so we don't have a line right there on the edge. Nice. What I also like, because I already have several layers underneath it, I'm seeing the texture of the underlayers show through. So I will show you that in just a moment here. Nice, 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 nice. And so what that's doing is that is going to bring this forward because I'm putting dark next to it to push the that back. A little bit of blue, stray blue got over here. There we go. So do you see that now? Oh yeah, nice. But I don't know if you can see like right up close in there, but there are the little brush strokes from the previous layers are in there. And because this is a transparent color, some of that visual texture, like the drip lines and everything, are showing back through. Isn't that fun? I think it's so much fun. Ah, I like this color. I think I'm going to glaze some of it over here too. I don't want to glaze it over that cute little red spot, but I'm going to glaze it over top of the blue that's already here and kind of darken that area a little bit and soften the edges. If you don't learn anything else from tonight's workshop, soften those edges with your fingers. Yeah, you soften the edges. Let's put a little bit more here just to darken that just a little bit. Nice. Okay, cool. There we go. So you see how it's really making those leaves show up, right? Isn't that fun? Oh, y'all, this is so much fun. Now, let me show you the difference between this high flow, which is much more fluid. Okay, now I'm going to clean it so I don't get it all over me. Um, between the high flow, which is very much a flowy, um, very liquid, almost like an ink. Okay, golden doesn't have an ink. Instead, the high flow acts as their ink, and it shows right on the bottle here: airbrush, brush, dip pen, and then an ink, like a fillable ink pen as well. Okay, so that's how you can use the high flow. It has lots of different uses to it, although um, I would be careful for airbrush with this one, the teal, because it has PW6 in it, which is white. That would make me scared to put that in a an airbrush. They say you can, but I'm like, okay. You'd have to clean your airbrush really well right away, I would say, with that. Okay, so let me show you the difference between that and the little bottles like this from Golden, which is the fluid acrylic. Okay, so this was the high flow, very watery, almost like an ink. All right, let me see. The box is underneath me here. I want to get one of those other ones out and show you what the fluid acrylic is like from Golden so that you can see what it's like and how it's just that little bit thicker. So this one is indigo, one of my favorite colors. Ah, I just love indigo. There's a little marble in there. So we want to mix it up nicely. So this is the next level thick from this. Both Golden, both acrylic. This is the high flow, very expensive, thin, super pigmented. This is the Golden fluid. And so this is similar to what you get in these kind of bottles, fluid. The difference is this is highly pigmented, expensive. And these are not as pigmented, inexpensive. Okay, so let's put some of this indigo out here. Eek. It's just slightly thicker, still fluid, just a little bit thicker. And then let me get my brush. So I'm getting most of the water out of my brush. So here is, it doesn't have as much flow. And let's take this and we'll put a little bit of it. I want to put a little bit of it right next to here so you can see the difference. It just, it's not as thick as a tube paint, and yet it's still thicker than those high flows, which are more like an ink. Okay, so let me show you here. You see, when I put it on with a brush, it's much more thick, right? It's a lot thicker. So let me use my finger here and soften the edges. It's a lot thicker. Nice. Let's bring it up. Oh, thank you, Flora. I love using my fingers now to soften the edges, which I never did before. I never really thought about it, but yeah, I'm loving it. Eek. Let's do that. There we go. Nice. All right. There we go. This is just going to have to, while I'm at it, this is just going to have to come down here too, next to the white. Next to the white. Okay, so now since Margie asked over on YouTube, I'm going to go ahead and do a swirl because I love swirls. So there again, I left a little bit of the under. You don't have to do that. You can do it all the way up to that white line. but that's just me. I like to leave a little bit of the design from underneath showing there. But that is significantly darker because the color is darker, but I want to show you that the coverage of the fluid paint is more than the coverage of the lot of pigment in here, the high flow, but it's just if you want those very light glazes, use the high flow. And if you want something a little bit darker, then you can use the fluid acrylics. Okay. Let me go ahead and put a swirl in here since Margie asked for a swirl. Mine as well, right? Let's see what I'm going to do. I'll probably use a marker for the swirl. And what color do I want? Probably a red. Red. Let's see. So here's a red acrylic marker. And that's the nice thing. Once this acrylic marker is dry, if I don't like the look of it, then what am I going to do? I'm just going to cover right over top of it with more paint, right? It's okay. It is okay. All right. I'm going to start it over here. Make sure the paint is flowing. Yep. And then I think I probably want to swirl down here, right? I want my swirl down here. So sometimes I do an open swirl like this. Sometimes I close it, so I match it there. And other times I will do like a modified circle. So let me do the modified circle. I'll put a modified circle right here. So the modified circle starts as a circle and then goes around, and then I get a little bit wonky on purpose because I like things that look very organic. And so that is an open swirl right there. And that is an organic modified circle right there, circle swirl. All right, so I made sure I got some of those in there for you, Margie, over on YouTube. Um, and these acrylic pens, it is literally just acrylic paint. I could even, if I wanted to put some red in a place and I had these markers, these are good to travel with because I can just do this and put a little bit of paint on my palette and then just pick it up with water and a brush. So let's do this and add a little bit of water to it so it'll flow and just pick it up as paint. And then let's put a little bit of it where do I want to put it? Let's just put a little bit in here. So I'm sort of darkening that edge right there. So you can just use it as acrylic paint. Now I put a lot of water in it. You don't have to put a lot of water in it. You can make it darker by not putting a lot of water in it. Let's get some over here. Interesting. Soften the edges. There we go. So that was taking it right out of the marker. Most acrylic markers you can do that with. You can just pump it a little bit and get some of the paint out, or you can put it right on the surface of your artwork and then soften it. So let's put a little, like a little couple of lines right here, like that. And then I can come back with my brush again, just a damp brush. And if I want to soften the edges, I can just, it's just acrylic paint. That's the beautiful thing about acrylic paint markers is they're just acrylic paint and you can treat them as such. They're water soluble until such time as they dry and then they're permanent. So I just pulled that out. Can you see the edge there where I just, let me go there where I pulled it out. So we can see there. Okay. Well, that is it for tonight's intuitive painting workshop. And I appreciate you coming along. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks so much for being here.